Hello and welcome to ADHD Support Talk Radio. My name is Tara McGillicuddy and I am the host of ADHD Support Talk Radio. I am also an adult ADD and ADHD productivity coach, and I am the founder and director of ADDclasses.com. And at ADDclasses.com, we provide virtual support and education to people affected by ADD and ADHD. We offer free webinars. We have an extensive ADD audio library with over 150 hours of classes, and we also offer more in-depth support programs. And you can learn more about ADDclasses.com by going to the website www.addclasses.com. And with that, I would like to welcome back Laura Rolands to ADHD Support Talk Radio. In just a moment, we're going to be talking about what happens when you are too busy to do some planning when you have ADD and ADHD. So welcome back, Laura.
Thanks, Tara. I'm happy to be here.
Before we get started talking about being too busy to plan, can you let our listeners know a bit about yourself and how they can get in contact with you?
Absolutely. Well, as Tara said, my name is Laura Rolands, and I am the founder of myattentioncoach.com, and I help adults with ADD and ADHD get their arms around their time and become more productive through my coaching. And I also teach classes through ADDclasses.com, and we have the Adult ADD Time Management Intensive coming up starting November 2nd. And to get a hold of me, feel free to email me at laura@myattentioncoach.com, or if you go to my website, there's a contact form there as well.
Okay, great. And you can learn more about the ADD Time Management Intensive by going to addtimemanagement.com. So, yeah, Laura, I'm so glad to have you back on. I haven't done a radio show in a while. I was so busy planning the ADHD Awareness Expo, so took some time off from the radio show, but we're back. And, you know, you and I are going back and forth about what should we talk about today? And you came up with a great topic that I know a lot of our listeners can really relate to, and it's about being too busy to plan or not making the time to plan, and, you know, what happens when we do that or when we don't plan. So where would you like to get started with that, Laura?
Well, I would first just like to talk a little bit about, you know, why that happens. And I think it's a reasonable thought that many people have, that they go through their days on autopilot and things are happening to them all the time. And so they're working, they're getting work done, and they're doing things that people are asking them to do. So I think they can often feel like, well, why bother planning? I'm much too busy to plan. I'm doing fine. I'm averting most crises, and, you know, stop talking to me about this planning thing, Laura. I mean, I don't know if you get that, Tara, but I get that sometimes from new clients when I'm talking with them.
You know, and if you're getting by and getting things done and things are okay, then why bother planning? I think some of us don't even look at it that way. We're not even aware that it's important to plan.
Yeah. And I would propose that, you know, when someone's feeling like, oh, I'm way too busy to plan, that if they take a step back, they may see some of those consequences. You know, maybe they're getting to meetings late, or doctor's appointments late even. I mean, even take it out of the work realm and the business realm, but just your own personal appointments. And then assignments can just get forgotten, and they may get done later, but they're going to get done because someone says, Laura, did you do this? You forgot about it. And if you would have, you know, made the time to plan, maybe you wouldn't have forgotten it, and it wouldn't have been such a last-minute rush. And I worry when – go ahead.
I think a lot of people hear the word plan, and there's almost like this fear associated. No, not the P word. So, what you're talking about, that those things do get in the way, you know, the consequences you were talking about. when you don't plan.
Yeah. And, one thing that we do talk about in the time management intensive is, just developing a personal planning system. I mean, we hear a lot of talk and read a lot about, planners, and many people, including myself, really preach that having a planner is really important. But I really believe it's the whole personal planning system where you want to have a planner that works for you. And that might be, it could be paper, it could be electronic, but it really is going to include your calendar and somewhere to keep track of all your tasks and projects. But then beyond that kind of physical or electronic space, you also need to have those planning times, and then you need to have reminders and routines set up so that you're actually using the planning system to get things done and to get places, and not forget those details that could be very costly, whether you missed a whole section of a report because you forgot to plan for it, or something like that.
And you were talking about a system, and you mentioned, there's tools, there's, time to plan. And I think the word system for some people can sound overwhelming and scare them away a bit, but it's really not once you find the ideal system. And like a time management system that you use might not be the exact one I use. So the personal system, and it's great that that's one of the things that you go over and support people with in the time management intensive, is helping them to learn how to use and find, the best time management system for them.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think, the word system may make it sound a little too a little much, a little over the top perhaps, but you're right. I mean, if you break it down kind of into some simple components, and really the key for me is finding that planner that works within your own personal system, your own personal preferences. And if you and I sat next to each other and showed each other how we plan out our days, chances are your way won't work for me and my way won't work for you. But that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with either one of the planners we use or the process we use.
I think that's one of the issues that people have had with ADHD is they've tried a planning system. I don't want to say Franklin Covey, but that's the first thing that comes to mind for me. And maybe that didn't work for them, so they just assume planning doesn't work. Why bother? But you just illustrated that you and I are two people whose planning systems probably wouldn't work for each other. So it's tweaking and finding the right planner, the right system. And that can be frustrating if you go at it by yourself, or you try a planning system that isn't meant for the way your brain works.
Right. One of my favorite things that we do in the intensive is I have a checklist that people can go through to really identify what's important to them about the planner, both the calendar side and keeping track of tasks and projects. And then people will share in the forum. They'll share, here's my preferences. I still don't know what kind of planner I want. And then I'll give them suggestions. And then other classmates will give them suggestions too, because one thing that's, I think, both good and bad just within the planning world is there's probably a new planner that comes out, whether electronically or on paper, once a day.
Yeah. And
that's part of what we do together is we work through, okay, how do I manage all these different options?
Yeah, and it's amazing, though, when you plan, when you even just do a tiny bit of planning, say you're doing like no planning right now, and you start with a little bit of planning, that can make a world of difference in your life. You get to meetings on time, you make more money, you're less stressed, and it's just starting with a little bit of planning that people can do.
Yeah. And that's, you know, if someone's resistant to it, I mean, I would say even, you know, start with review your calendar at the beginning and end of every day, just so you know what's coming up tomorrow or even what's coming up over the next, you know, 7 days, so that you can, you know, you can make arrangements. You know, maybe it's the kids have a cross-country meet tomorrow. Okay, well, how are you either going to get there or make sure they have a ride home from there? You know, but if you don't look at your calendar, then it could be, you know, Mom, I'm waiting for you to pick me up. So really even, you know, sometimes, and you mentioned Franklin Covey, I mean, you probably took some of the same classes I did, you know, back in the maybe 90s or early 2000s, and it was like, okay, you must plan for a half an hour every single day. And that's not going to work for everybody. And but that in and of itself, I think, can be overwhelming that, well, I don't have a half hour to spend planning. And that's where, you know, I love your idea. Well, then spend a few minutes as a start and see what benefits come along.
And reviewing your calendar twice a day, I mean, that can be just moments. That, you know, depending on how active you are and what's going on in your life, that might just be 30 seconds in the morning, 30 seconds in the day to just glance at it. You're not, you know, telling people to start out with, you know, 90 minutes in the morning and planning 90 minutes in the day. We're both saying start with a tiny bit and just looking at your calendar, reviewing it. I mean, that can like really improve your life. So, and that's just slowing down a tiny bit and, you know, dedicating moments each day to your calendar.
Yeah. And I think then the more you do that, the more you can make those small steps towards, you know, remembering the different details that need to get done and the different places you need to get to, and staying on top of, you know, kind of those daily things of life that they need to happen, and they're going to happen, and we just need to make sure we're there.
So, Laura, is there anything that we haven't discussed today when it comes to planning and ADHD that you feel is important?
You know, I guess kind of the last thing I would mention is just when, and we talk about this a lot in the intensive, but interruptions are a huge time management issue. And I think about them in the sense of planning, in that if you don't have a plan for your day and someone comes into your office and they interrupt you and they talk to you for, say, a half hour. And if you don't have, you know, kind of that idea of what am I to be accomplishing today, that half hour could go by and maybe they got whatever they needed, but you didn't get anything of what you needed done. And it can really just kind of surprise you and cause a problem. But if you have a plan and someone comes and interrupts you, you know what, I got a couple more things I need to get done. Can I come see you when I'm done? Or could you send me a meeting notice? You know, if you've got a plan, you can kind of be ready with a sort of a counter proposal, I guess, to that interruption. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense, because we have so many interruptions in our life, and if you didn't have a plan to begin with or a guideline to begin with, it can be almost impossible to get back and do what you were supposed to be doing or intended to do.
Yeah. So that's really kind of and you know, as I talked in the expo, I mean, interruptions I think are just a huge deal, but I think that there is that tie-in, and we can help avoid those interruptions if we've got planning time set aside.
I think one of the things I've found working with clients over the years is we can get too rigid or too much into the perfectionism mode when it comes to planning, and the plan didn't work, why bother? When, like the example that you were talking about with the interruptions, that's the way you can kind of adjust your plan or tweak your plan. The plan doesn't have to be set in stone, but just to have something to work with is important.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I would definitely agree. And it's a start to get your mind around what needs to happen.
Now, I know we've talked a bit about, we've mentioned the time management intensive during this show a little bit, but can you tell our listeners a bit more about the time management program?
Sure, I would love to. It's a 4-week program, and we meet for an hour and 15 minutes. This fall, we're doing it every Wednesday evening, starting November 2nd, and we will start really from the foundation of what's the link, why the link between ADHD and time management, and then we'll look at really what are the participants' goals and what do they want to achieve around time management, and then we're going to develop that personal planning system that I talked about. So each person will walk away with what's their personal system, then increasing just time awareness, because that can be such a challenge with time management, and then prioritizing to-do lists. We'll deal with procrastination, and then strategies on interruptions, and then we'll wrap up with helping to develop just your own personalized structure to make all the time management happen as you move forward. And then I talk on the last class, we talk about how do you maintain that momentum that you've built up in the class. And we also
it's a great program.
Yeah, we always get really good feedback, and there's also a forum, an online forum. It's optional, but it can be really fun when people are sharing with each other, because what we've seen over the last few years is that people can really develop their own support structure too. I'm there in the forum to help support, but then members can help support each other. So you're getting a lot more than only the classes too. And then the recordings and handouts are all available online as well. Yeah,
that connection and community is such a huge piece. It's great that you give out the information, but having, both, the presenter, the instructor, and then the community of people, it makes a great program. So I'm excited that we're offering it again. And, if you can't make it on Wednesday nights, like Laura said, there are recordings, so you can listen to them and download them at your own convenience. So you can learn more about that at addtimemanagement.com. And Laura, before we get going, are there any final thoughts that you'd like to leave with people today? And could you give out your contact information once again?
Sure. I would say the one thing I would ask you to take away from the talk today is just if you're not currently doing any kind of planning, start small. Plan for 5 minutes tomorrow, and maybe that just includes a review of your calendar and jotting down 3 things that you want to do today. And I think that can make a huge improvement in your time management. And you can reach me at laura@myattentioncoach.com, or just the contact page on my website, which is myattentioncoach.com. And thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Laura Rolands, and thank you everyone for taking the time to listen to ADHD Support Talk Radio. If you are listening to us on iTunes or Stitcher or Google Play, be sure to stop by our website at ADHDSupportTalk.com. Thanks again.